the WrestleHavoc Podcast on YouTube, where we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. We talk all that goes on in the realm of WWE and AEW every week. And now, here's your host, the one that will give you a reality check on pro wrestling, Flamin' Ricky DeReyes. This is the WrestleHavoc Podcast.
What's up, everybody? It is Flamin' Ricky DeReyes, right here on the WrestleHavoc Podcast, here to review Friday Night SmackDown from April 28th, 2023. Of course, it is night one of the WWE Draft. How was the reaction for the WWE Draft? Honestly, there was a mixed reaction to see the draft picks that we ended up getting. Some draft picks made sense. Some other draft picks didn't make sense. And other things besides the WWE Draft, of course, we also had the main event, which was a WrestleMania rematch with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn defending their undisputed tag team titles against the Usos. And I always come on here on the SmackDown Review and talk about how there is a bigger story regarding Jey Uso. They are teasing it every single week, and this week was absolutely no different. But also, besides that, really nothing else happened on the show. Really, the majority of the things that happened on the show was the WWE Draft and the main event. Nothing else. But what are my thoughts on the show overall? I thought it was a fine show, to be quite honest with you. Not the best show ever. Usually when it comes to the WWE Draft, WWE tends to disappoint us a lot when it comes to the draft every year. Now, granted, this is the first draft that we had because if you guys do remember, we had no draft last year. So basically, this is going to be a big change and shakeup for the rosters. And overall, SmackDown was a fine show. But before I get on with all this craziness, make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc Podcast right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the frickin' referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Also, the WrestleHavoc Podcast is also available on audio platforms. It is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and Google Podcasts. So if you guys want to listen to the WrestleHavoc Podcast in audio format, it is available on all of those platforms. Plus, if you guys missed it, the AEW Dynamite review is up on the channel. I talk about Roderick Strong being all elite and saving Adam Cole from the Jericho Appreciation Society. We had matches like Orange Cassidy versus Bandito, Kenny Omega and Konosuke Takeshita team up to take on the Butcher and the Blade, and it looks like we are going to be getting a steel cage match between Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega in a couple of weeks. I believe it's the May 10th episode of Dynamite, in which it will be taking place in Detroit. So that's going to be a big night. A lot of things are happening in the realm of AEW, and overall I thought Dynamite was great this week. So if you guys haven't checked out the AEW Dynamite review, the link will be in the description below. So let's talk about SmackDown. Of course, it is the first night of the WWE Draft. The WWE Draft will continue tomorrow night on Raw. And the show kicks off with Triple H coming out to the podium, which is on the stage. And he welcomes us to Friday Night SmackDown and welcomes us to the 2023 WWE Draft. And he says before they get started, he's going to lay out some ground rules. And these ground rules are that every superstar from Raw and SmackDown are subject to the possibility of transferring to the other brand. 50% of the roster will be drafted on this show, and the other 50% will be drafted on Monday on Raw. A select few talents from NXT will be selected as well, and the post-draft rosters will officially go into effect on May 8th, on the May 8th episode of Raw after Backlash. So after Backlash, that's when those new rosters will take into effect. And he also gives away the first round of the 2023 WWE Draft. And the first round goes, of course, SmackDown gets the number one pick, obviously, because of the fact that SmackDown, if you really think about it, people say Raw's the flagship show. Nowadays, SmackDown is kind of the flagship show. The first round of the WWE Draft, the first overall pick is, of course, Roman Reigns, along with Solo Sikoa and Paul Heyman. They get drafted to the SmackDown brand, which makes total sense. I mean, if you honestly think about it, even before the draft even happened, you obviously needed to expect that Roman Reigns was going to get drafted to SmackDown and he was going to be the number 1 pick. But what's interesting is that the Usos are not drafted. Roman Reigns, Solo Sikoa, and Paul Heyman have been drafted to SmackDown. So very interesting that the Usos are not involved. Cody Rhodes is the number 2 pick, and he has been drafted to Raw. Bianca Belair, the current Raw Women's Champion, has been drafted to SmackDown, and Becky Lynch will be remaining on Raw. All right, this is my problem. Number 1, Cody Rhodes. Now, there can be pros and cons to Cody Rhodes staying on Raw, but of course, as you guys all know, WWE has unveiled the World Heavyweight Championship this past Monday on Raw, and I stated specifically on that Raw review that Cody needs to be drafted to the SmackDown brand. Now, a lot of people are saying, oh, but there's money in the bank for Cody Rhodes to win so he can eventually chase after Roman Reigns. And that's all fine and good. But if you really think about it, isn't WWE going to be taking the brand split seriously at this point? So it wouldn't really make sense for a Raw talent to go after the SmackDown champion. Granted, he does have money in the bank, but WWE has broken rules before. But Cody Rhodes getting drafted to Raw, it looks like he's going to be going after the World Heavyweight title. Do I see him winning the World Heavyweight title on the Raw side? Honestly, I do not see him winning, but if they do have him win the World Heavyweight Championship, then honestly, what the hell was the point? It would make no sense, and you're basically undoing everything that you have done with Cody Rhodes, because the whole story of Cody Rhodes ever since he came back to the WWE was going after Roman Reigns and the Undisputed title, and all of a sudden you give him the World Heavyweight title. That would make no sense. Do I see him going after it? Yes, I do. But I do not see him winning the World Heavyweight Championship. Of course, we do have money in the bank, but we're going to have to wait and see what WWE's plans are for the future. Another thing, Becky Lynch has been drafted to SmackDown. Not Becky Lynch. Bianca Belair, my apologies. Bianca Belair has been drafted to SmackDown, and Bianca Belair is your current Raw Women's Champion. WWE has a tendency all the time, every time when the draft comes around, that they would draft, their Raw Women's Champion to the opposite brand, or the SmackDown Tag Team Champions to the opposite brand. I absolutely hate when they do that. The reason why is because you're possibly going to be interfering with all the plans that you have for Bianca Belair. But Bianca Belair's case, it's very, very interesting to see why they drafted Bianca Belair to SmackDown as the Raw Women's Champion, considering the fact that Bianca Belair has had that title for well over a year. So you're telling me that she is now going to be the SmackDown Women's Champion, and you're basically going to be undoing everything that you have built with Bianca Belair throughout this past whole year. Now, granted, throughout this whole year, Bianca Belair's title reign has been kind of boring in my opinion, but again, it would make no sense. I definitely do see WWE doing that really dumb thing in which they had the SmackDown Women's Champion and the Raw Women's Champion swapping their championships, and they would call themselves champion. I do not see them doing that. It all depends where Rhea Ripley will be going on Monday, because she is eligible for the draft this coming Monday. But honestly, I do not see Rhea Ripley getting drafted. Maybe she will. I have absolutely no idea. But again, it's just going to be very interesting to see what WWE does, honestly. To be quite honest with you, I'm just not really that too keen on the decision of Bianca Belair getting drafted to the SmackDown brand. So after that, Triple H brings out the Usos, and Jimmy and Jay are on the stage. The Bloodline state that the Bloodline is now in your city. First off, congrats to your tribal chief, Roman Reigns, for being the number 1 draft pick in the 2023 WWE Draft. He knows that the tribal chief is at home watching, and tonight they bring back gold home to the Bloodline, and they know he's been feeling a certain way since WrestleMania. He ain't text, he ain't call, he ain't DM him back, he's not emailing him back, he's not sending a smoke signal back, he sent a letter, and he hasn't been sending a letter in a bottle back. They decide, they dedicate this victory to the tribal chief, and tonight they become 9-time tag team champions. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, the current Undisputed Tag Team Champions, come out, and Sami has the microphone. He says, look, he isn't here to talk sense into them. He thinks what he said he needed to say, but he will only say this one thing. He doesn't think it's strange since they beat them at WrestleMania for those tag team titles, and all this time Roman hasn't said a single word to them. And he is here dedicating this match to him tonight. Also, did you not see what he and everybody else saw? Roman Reigns was drafted with Paul Heyman and Solo Sikoa. No Usos, no Bloodline. that doesn't tell you everything you need to know, then I don't know what to tell you. Make no mistake, tonight they are walking out with these tag team titles, and then Jay immediately interrupts and says he ain't walking out with anything. It's coming, but they will beat them tonight, and once they beat Kevin and Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens is going to be turning on his back on him, and then it will be the end of this brotherhood. Kevin Owens then immediately interrupts Jimmy, who states that. Jesus Christ, I'm tongue-tied once again. KO then says he's sick of hearing all this crap. He doesn't care what happens to you. He doesn't care about Roman Reigns. The only thing that matters tonight is that they get in that ring and they beat the hell out of them and keep these tag team championships. Overall, this was not a bad segment whatsoever to kick off the show. Great segment overall. Again, it would make no sense for Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn to lose these tag team titles. It just makes no sense whatsoever because you're then undoing everything that you have done at WrestleMania. Not only that, it would make no sense for Kevin Owens to turn on Sami Zayn, in my opinion, because then you would undo everything that had went on in the build-up to WrestleMania. But nonetheless, this really got me excited for the tag team match that we were going to see earlier. But again, I constantly repeat myself because this is very important. The bigger story is regarding Jey Uso, and once again, they teased it on this show. We got our first official match of the evening. We got Butch versus LA Knight. Butch, of course, of the Brawling Brutes taking on LA Knight. Overall thoughts on this match. This is a relatively short match, but not a bad match whatsoever. We got a clothesline by Butch on LA Knight, but then Butch works on the fingers of LA Knight. And then he stomps onto the arm of LA Knight. LA Knight then fights back, but then Butch is on the apron, but then Butch goes for the 10 beats of the bell ring in reverse, which looked pretty cool to see. Butch then goes to the top, but then misses. Butch applies a submission hold on LA Knight, but then LA Knight gets to the ropes, and then he throws Butch on the apron. Once we're back from commercial break, Butch is in control over LA Knight, and then he drives his knees on LA Knight. We then get a kick by LA Knight, or I should say on LA Knight, but then we get a cover by Butch and a near fall. LA Knight at this point is on the outside, but then we get a moonsault by Butch on LA Knight onto the outside. Meanwhile, he takes LA Knight back into the ring, but then Butch goes to the top, but then LA Knight comes in and hits a right hand. LA Knight then is on the second rope, but then Butch twists the fingers of LA Knight. Knight comes back, but then he goes straight to the top and hits a superplex. And I mean a beautiful, smooth-ass superplex. That shit looked fire. We got a cover and a near fall, but then LA Knight picks up Butch. Butch then lands on his feet, but then Butch hits the enziguri, but then Butch runs into a boot on LA Knight. Then Butch goes for the standing switch, but then he targets the fingers once again of LA Knight. But then LA Knight makes it to the ropes. Knight is on the apron, but then he drives Butch onto the ring post, and then he drops down Butch headfirst onto the mat, and we get a cover, and LA Knight gets the win. Very interesting scenario for LA Knight. Of course, LA Knight hasn't really been winning a lot of his matches in recently. Not only that, he wasn't even on WrestleMania, which is a crime in my opinion. But, of course, LA Knight wasn't eligible, I believe, for the draft on this show. I believe he's going to be eligible for the draft this coming Monday on Raw. And I definitely see LA Knight getting drafted to the Raw brand and possibly being a contender, a possible contender for the World Heavyweight title. Now, granted, do I see him winning the World Heavyweight title now? Absolutely not. I think it's a little bit too early. Even though I do think LA Knight should get pushed, I think him winning the championship right now is not really the best idea. I think you should wait further down. But do I see him being possibly in the tournament for the World Heavyweight title? Yes, I definitely do see that being the case. The Usos are backstage with Solo Sikoa and Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman gives this motivational promo while Jimmy and Jey Uso are sitting in the couch. Paul Heyman and Solo Sikoa are right behind them. And, of course, Paul Heyman is doing the teasing that he has been doing for the past couple of weeks regarding the Usos, specifically Jey. Tonight is the night because the whole world thinks the Usos will be drafted to Raw. Tonight they get drafted to the Island of Relevancy as champions or get drafted to the Emotion of Obscurity as ex-champions. And after Paul Heyman stated that, literally you had Jey Uso just make this look on his face like, what the fuck did he just say? Jey Uso has a weird look on his face, and he says, that being Paul Heyman, he says that the tribal chief wants to let them know that success is the only avenue tonight because tonight is the night. They reject the failure that Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn caused them, and they embrace their bloodline, and they come back to the locker room, and the tribal chief wants to know one way or another. He will accept the fact that tonight, and meanwhile, while Paul Heyman states that he looks directly at Solo Sikoa, is the night. And Paul Heyman gives him the wrist tape and looks at Solo Sikoa. And that was the end of that little backstage promo right there by Heyman. Again, I love the teases that they're making, man. Again, that's top-tier storytelling right over there, man. You know shit's going to go down regarding Jey Uso, especially after that ending of the tag team title main event. RVD and Michael P.S.K. Hayes, of course, one half of the Freebirds, comes out to the announce table to announce the second round of the WWE Draft. So in the second round, we have the Street Profits getting drafted to SmackDown from Raw. Imperium get drafted to Raw, that being the entirety of Imperium. So we got Gunther, the IC champion. We got Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci getting drafted to Raw, which honestly I would assume that once Monday happens and we get the draft on Raw tomorrow night, I definitely assume that Austin Theory, who is the current U.S. champion, is going to get drafted to SmackDown. Edge, who was the third overall pick in the second round, gets drafted back to SmackDown, and then Matt Riddle gets drafted to Raw, so he will be remaining on that show. What are my thoughts? These are not bad picks. Imperium getting drafted to Raw, honestly. Even though, in hindsight, I kind of do not like the decision, I actually much rather prefer Gunther and the rest of Imperium to be staying on SmackDown because they had a really good run for themselves on the SmackDown side. If Roman Reigns is going to be on that show, Gunther's nowhere going to be near that World Championship. And honestly, they do have the World Heavyweight title on the Raw side. And honestly, Raw has been kind of a boring show. So honestly, adding Imperium over there definitely ups the ante, and you give something for Gunther to do. Not only that, it's something new for Gunther to do because literally Gunther has slayed throughout the entirety of the whole SmackDown roster. Edge getting drafted to SmackDown. I mean, he's been on SmackDown before, so honestly, we do not know what they're going to be doing with Edge, but honestly, it's not a bad pick. Maybe they could rekindle the feud between Edge and Roman Reigns because they did feud 2 years ago. We're just going to have to wait and see what they do. Matt Riddle staying on Raw. I mean, nothing really special there. He's been doing stuff on Raw ever since he came back a couple of weeks ago. So honestly, you know, not a bad second round overall. The Street Profits as well. The Street Profits, I mean, they've been back and forth on Raw and SmackDown. I mean, they've been on SmackDown 2 years ago, and then they got drafted to Raw. So, honestly, the Street Profits, I mean, they're great. They're great, so they're going to do great things as well. We then have the Triple Threat Tag Team match. We got the Street Profits taking on Ricochet and Braun Strowman, taking on Cruz del Toro and Joaquin Wilde of the LWO, the Latino World Order. The Profits cut a promo. Ford says that you can see that him and his boy, his right-hand man, 100 Grand, Angelo Dawkins, are back in the blue. So, baby, what it do? Because they about to be on Friday Night SmackDown. Nothing's changed but the day that they work on. They talk about how they want the smoke. And then Ricochet and Braun Strowman and the LWO come out. The match starts. Overall thoughts on this match. This was a really good match overall. Ford and Joaquin Wilde gang up on Braun Strowman. After that, Ford gets taken to the outside, but then Joaquin Wilde gets taken to the outside. Then Del Toro gets taken to the outside by Braun Strowman, so Strowman is literally taking out everybody. Strowman then is about to throw Ricochet over the top rope, and of course that's a little nod to what happened last week, because if you guys do not remember, last week, during a match that Ricochet and Braun Strowman had, Strowman threw Ricochet and literally missed, and Ricochet fell on his ass on the mat. So they basically made fun of that. Strowman says that he has him and he's good, and he manages to throw Ricochet on everybody on the outside. Once we're back from commercial break, Dawkins and Ricochet fight it out. Cruz del Toro enters the fray, but then Ricochet and Del Toro gang up on Angelo Dawkins. Del Toro gets taken to the apron, but then he hits the enziguri and goes to the top, and he hits the shotgun dropkick on Angelo Dawkins. And then Ricochet hits a kick and a right hand. Ricochet then gets driven onto the turnbuckle, but then Del Toro gets caught up in the boot. Ricochet then goes to the top, and then he gets hit with the enziguri. Wilde then off the top tags in and hits the somersault onto the outside on both of the Street Profits. Then Joaquin Wilde counters the powerbomb by Ricochet with the head scissors. It looked like a powerbomb attempt, but Joaquin Wilde hit the beautiful head scissors, or Hurricane Rana, whatever you want to call it. We get a cover and a near fall, but then Joaquin Wilde gets taken to the outside. Cruz del Toro then tags in. He takes out Braun Strowman, and then he hits a boot on Ricochet. And then he hits a suplex on Ricochet after that. We get a cover and a near fall, but then Ford is on the apron and lands lands into a right hand. And then Strowman pounces Del Toro to the outside. And then Strowman runs around the ring with the Strowman Express and takes out everybody. Dawkins goes for the somersault on the outside, taking out Braun Strowman, but then meanwhile, Ricochet, who is in the ring, hits a somersault, taking out Angelo Dawkins, which looked pretty fucking fire. Once we're back in the ring, Ricochet goes to the top and he misses the 450 splash, and then Dawkins hits a right hand, but then Ford goes for the tag. We then get a spine buster by Angelo Dawkins. Meanwhile, Ford goes for the crossbody or the frog splash, whatever you want to call it, and we get a cover, and the Street Profits get the win. Of course, it made total sense for the Street Profits to get the win. I mean, these guys were just drafted to SmackDown, so it would make total sense for them to get the win in this match. But nonetheless, the Street Profits getting drafted to Raw, or SmackDown, I should say, it's not a bad decision at all. I think, there's a lot of tag teams that the Street Profits could definitely feud with. I mean, you definitely do have the Usos as long as they're on SmackDown, because we don't know where their fate is going to be lying. But we also got teams like the Viking Raiders. We also got the LWO, I believe. I believe they are on SmackDown. I completely forgot what brand that they are on. You see, this is the problem with the brand split, man. The brand split lacks exclusivity, and I always say that. But nonetheless, it's a great decision that the Street Profits will be drafted to SmackDown. It has been announced that Bad Bunny will be on SmackDown next week, or I should say this coming Friday on SmackDown, of course. He basically challenged Damian Priest to a match at the Backlash pay-per-view, so we're going to be talking about that as we head on to this Friday's SmackDown. Now we are headed to the third overall pick of the WWE Draft. JBL is in the podium, and Teddy Long, yes, Playa, the former SmackDown general manager, comes in, and they all announced the third round of the WWE Draft. So in the third round, we got Bobby Lashley drafted from Raw to SmackDown. Drew McIntyre has been drafted to Raw. The OC, now the entirety of the OC, that being AJ Styles, Gallows and Anderson, and Mitch and Mia Yim. If you guys do not recall, Mia Yim hasn't really been doing much of anything on Raw these past couple of weeks. So it's great that they're basically pairing her back up with the OC, and now they're one official unit. They are drafted to SmackDown, and The Miz stays on Raw. Overall, Drew McIntyre getting drafted to Raw, I think it's a great decision because I think he's going to be nowhere near Roman Reigns at this point. Bobby Lashley getting drafted to SmackDown, I think that's a great decision as well. I feel like he's doing really nothing on Raw. Yes, he's going after the U.S. title, but it's not like he hasn't won the U.S. title before. So honestly, Bobby Lashley getting drafted to SmackDown makes total sense. And the OC is definitely the highlight of this entire round because, of course, AJ Styles was out with an injury, and the OC really hasn't been doing anything. Gallows and Anderson, I don't think, haven't been on television for like how many months now? Or maybe I'm over-exaggerating, but I felt like they haven't been on television forever. And the fact that Mia Yim is basically, they paired her back up with the OC, I think it gives some sort of direction for Mia Yim because Mia Yim hasn't been doing really much of anything on Raw. She's just been in tag team matches with Candice LeRae, and honestly, those haven't been going over so well in my opinion. But honestly, the highlight is definitely the OC, especially AJ Styles. I always thought AJ Styles fit very well on SmackDown. I mean, if you think SmackDown, you think of guys like AJ Styles, and this is the problem with the WWE brand split nowadays. This is another problem. Back in the day, when I grew up watching wrestling, with the brand split, whenever you thought of SmackDown, you thought of guys like Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, and Edge. And whenever you thought of Raw, you thought of Raw of guys like Randy Orton, Triple H, John Cena. They had that identity. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like the brand split nowadays doesn't really have that identity. They kind of just move back and forth for the sake of moving back and forth, especially when the draft comes around. Like, you have the same guys, like, literally get drafted every week or every year to the opposite brands, and I'm like, okay, man, whenever you think of Raw, you don't think of a guy like Austin Theory, you know what I'm saying? But when it comes to AJ Styles especially, AJ Styles, definitely made SmackDown what it was, or at least one of the reasons he made SmackDown what it was. I thought he fit very well on the SmackDown brand back in 2016, 2017, and 2018. So honestly, with AJ Styles, with the OC getting drafted back to SmackDown, or I should say AJ Styles himself getting drafted back to SmackDown, it creates a lot of possibilities, especially for Roman Reigns, because if you guys think about it, ever since Roman Reigns turned heel back in August of 2020, he hasn't really been feuding with Roman Reigns as far as I'm concerned. Like, I mean, maybe they had some interaction, but there wasn't any legitimate feud with Roman Reigns and AJ Styles with this incarnation of Roman Reigns. So it's going to be very interesting. And honestly, I would pay a whole lot of money to see an OC versus Bloodline feud. That'd be fucking fire. All right. After the third round, we got Zelina Vega versus Sonya Deville in a relatively short match. Of course, Zelina Vega is going to be wrestling Rhea Ripley in Puerto Rico in San Juan at the Backlash pay-per-view for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Sonya is in control right from the beginning. She misses the pump kick, and then we get a kick by Sonya. Vega then gets sent into the corner, but then we get repeated body shots by Sonya into the corner. Vega then goes for the cross arm breaker on the ropes. And then Chelsea Green argues with Zelina on the outside, but then we get a kick by Sonya on the outside. Then we get a cover into near fall. And then we get repeated kicks by Sonya Deville, but then Zelina in the ring goes for the side headlock. And then we get a kick by Sonya, and then we get a cover into near fall, and then we get repeated body shots by Sonya into the corner. And then Sonya picks up Zelina Vega with the vertical suplex attempt, but then Vega runs into an elbow. But then Vega goes for the roll-up, and then we get a cover, and Vega wins the match. After the match, Rhea Ripley immediately comes in, and she attacks Zelina Vega from behind, and then she headbutts Sonya Deville, but then Rhea tries to hit the Riptide, but then Zelina Vega counters into a DDT. Great stuff overall. Am I excited for Rhea Ripley versus Zelina Vega at Backlash? No, because we all know who's going to be winning anyway. It's very much predictable, but even if I'm not excited for this match, or I think this match wouldn't make any sense technically, on the other side, it does kind of make sense considering the fact that both Rhea Ripley and Zelina Vega are part of two factions that are feuding with one another, so it makes total sense for this match to happen. We got the OC in a segment. AJ Styles, the Good Brothers, and Mitchin are in the ring. I still call Gallows and Anderson the Good Brothers. Jesus Christ. It's great to see AJ Styles back, man. You know, AJ Styles has been missed, in my opinion. How long has he been out? He's been out for a while. And honestly, AJ Styles, man, you know, he's one of my favorites, and I really hope they put him in some sort of main event program. So immediately before they all speak, Valhalla and the Viking Raiders come out. AJ then states he wants to make sure if they came out here to pick a fight, it's 4 against 3, and they are smarter than they look. And then what happens is that they go back to the turnbuckle, and then they sit on the top rope. Or I should say AJ sits on the top rope. And this was actually pretty badass, man. You had AJ literally sitting on the top rope and telling Gallows and Anderson, hey, OC, handle your business. And then a brawl breaks loose between both factions. And then Gallows and Anderson hit the Magic Killer on Eric. AJ has the mic, and SmackDown, they have just started, says AJ Styles. And then they leave, but then AJ is on the apron and hits the phenomenal forearm. Then Road Dogg and Shawn Michaels come out to the podium for the fourth round of the draft. So in the fourth round, we got Damage Control getting drafted to SmackDown, Shinsuke Nakamura getting drafted to Raw, Alba Fire and Isla Dawn from NXT, who I believe they are the current NXT Women's Tag Team Champions, have been drafted to SmackDown. And Indy Hartwell, who is the NXT Women's Champion, is drafted to Raw. Now, I believe Indy Hartwell just won the NXT Women's Championship at the Stand and Deliver show last month at WrestleMania weekend, or I should say earlier this month. So the fact that they drafted Indy Hartwell, I believe she defended her title this past Tuesday on NXT. I don't watch NXT, so I don't know. Didn't she have to drop that title in order to get drafted? I don't know why they do that. Again, WWE has a tendency to draft their champions, but whatever. It makes no sense. Shinsuke Nakamura in a backstage interview talks about how he's excited to go to Raw, and then Karrion Kross attacks Shinsuke Nakamura from behind. And the Usos are backstage, and he says that they are pumped up. Paul Heyman says that Solo will stay here with him because tonight is their night, and then they leave, and then Solo looks at his fists, preparing he's going to be setting up a Samoan spike on either Jey Uso or Jimmy Uso, most likely Jey. And then we got our main event. We got Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus the Usos for the Undisputed Tag Team Championships. Overall thoughts on this match. This match was not as good as their WrestleMania match, but that is not to say that this match was bad. This match was really good. It's just if you compare it to their WrestleMania match, I feel like there's no comparison whatsoever. The Usos go straight for the attack. Sami then gets sent to the ring post, but then Kevin Owens goes back into the ring. Jey then hits a super kick, but then gets caught into a stunner, countered by Jey, and then he hits the super kick. Jimmy then tags in. The Usos go for the double super kick on Kevin Owens, and then we get a cover and a near fall. We go to commercial break, and once we're back from break, Jimmy then drives the knee of Kevin Owens onto the post, and then we get a stomp by Jimmy on Kevin Owens, but then Jey tags in. We get a double team by the Usos on Kevin Owens, but then once again, Jimmy drives the knee of Kevin Owens onto the post. But then later on, Kevin Owens pulls Jimmy to the post, and then Kevin Owens tries to tag in Sami Zayn, but then Jey makes the tag. After that, Sami tags in. He goes after Jey Uso, but then we get a bunch of back and forth shots by both men. Sami then takes Jey to the outside, but then Jimmy gets taken to the outside as well. At this point, Sami is in the ring, and then he hits the somersault on the outside. And then Sami takes Jey into the ring, but then Sami goes to the top, and then we get a right hand by Jey Uso. At this point, Jey is on the middle rope, but then both fight it out onto the top. Sami then goes for a sunset flip powerbomb, or roll-up, I should say. Sunset flip roll-up, I should say, and we get a near fall. We get repeated rights by Jey Uso. Sami then pulls Jey and for the Blue Thunder Bomb, and we get a cover and a near fall. After that, Sami goes to the top, and then he comes back with the Enziguri taking Sami to the outside. And once we're back from commercial break, Kevin Owens makes the tag. He then takes out Jey Uso, and then Kevin Owens goes for the cannonball on Jimmy into the corner, and then Kevin Owens goes to the top. After that, we get a right hand by Jimmy Uso, and then Jimmy goes to the top as well. We get repeated rights by Jimmy, but then Kevin Owens tries to pick him up. Kevin Owens goes for the Fisherman's Buster on Jimmy off the top as well. Kevin Owens goes to the top once again and hits the Swanton Bomb, and then we get a cover and a near fall. Meanwhile, Solo and Paul Heyman are backstage watching this match, and Heyman has Roman Reigns on the phone. What the fuck is going on? Paul Heyman then tells Solo, after getting off the phone with Roman Reigns, he got the call, tonight is his night. What the hell does that mean? Meanwhile, back in the ring, back and forth by Jimmy and Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens goes for the pump-up powerbomb, and we get a cover and a kick out. After that, Sami goes after Jey Uso. Jey then gets taken to the outside, but then falls into a super kick by Jey Uso. And then we get a roll-up by Jimmy on Kevin Owens, and then we get a near fall. Jimmy goes for the stunner, and then we get a cover and a near fall, but then Solo Sikoa comes out. Shit is about to get real. Meanwhile, Matt Riddle, as soon as Solo Sikoa is walking down to the ring, Matt Riddle comes in and attacks Solo Sikoa on the stage. Jimmy goes for the Enziguri, and then Jey makes the tag. We get a super kick on Kevin Owens, and then by Jey on Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens then goes for the double super kick. After that, we get a cover by Jey and a near fall. After that, we get a double super kick once again by Kevin Owens. And then they hit the super kick on Sami, then on Kevin Owens. And then we get a cover and a kick out. Jey tags in. We get a super kick on Kevin Owens. Then he goes for the cover once again and a near fall. Kevin Owens is back up on its feet, and then Kevin Owens tries to fight back, but then Jey hits the super kick, taking down Kevin Owens once again. Jimmy makes the tag. Sami then drags Jey to the outside, and then he sends him to the steel steps, which then opens the field for Kevin Owens. And then he hits the stunner on Jimmy Uso. Sami comes back into the ring, hits the haluva kick on Sami Zayn, and we get a cover, and Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens retain the tag team championships. Overall thoughts on this match. This was a great match overall. Of course, the greater story was told definitely in this match, but really the most important thing that was told was Solo Sikoa. So that was actually very interesting to see as well. But nonetheless, this was absolutely fantastic to see. Solo Sikoa looks like it was about to beat the hell out of Jey Uso, but definitely it didn't happen. But the look on Jey Uso's face when they lost. Now, granted, Jimmy was the one that took the pin, but the question is what was the story that was told? What was basically the whole point of Solo Sikoa coming out to the ring? Was it a situation in which if Jey Uso lost, if Matt Riddle hadn't attacked him, was it a situation in which they were going to, basically, he was going to hit the Samoan spike on Jey Uso? I have absolutely no idea, but again, man, they're planting the seeds for a bigger story. And I've always said this at the top of this, literally since January of this year, ever since Sami Zayn was in the Bloodline and they were starting to tease a execution of Sami Zayn out of the Bloodline. The greater story to be told is the Jey Uso, and they're definitely telling that story. Now, we're going to have to wait and see what they do with the draft on Monday, considering the fact that the Usos haven't been drafted to a brand, and Roman Reigns, Solo Sikoa, and Paul Heyman were the number one pick, and they were drafted as a trio. So we're going to have to wait and see what they do. But a lot of things are escalating with the Bloodline, man. Things are not looking good for Jey Uso. But yeah, that was my SmackDown review from April 28th, 2023. Overall thoughts on this show. I thought this was a fine show for what it was. Not the best show. Of course, we had the draft happening, and the draft is going to be continuing tomorrow night on Raw. And a lot of mixed reactions regarding the draft. Of course, there was a lot of draft picks that really made absolutely no sense. A lot of champions were drafted to their opposite brands, which is another thing that made absolutely no sense. But we're going to have to wait and see what WWE plans. But yeah, that was my SmackDown review from April 28th, 2023. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications. I mean, look out for more videos right here on the WrestleHavoc Podcast, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the freaking referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. And as always, it is Flamin' Rick, Ricky DeRays, signing out. See you guys later.